Good. So I'm going to talk a little bit, first of all, about what to do if you're on quarantine. If you're watching this, you're on quarantine. So here's what you need to know about that. First of all, I need to give you the expectations. If you are actually sick with COVID, we don't expect you to do the work, at least not until you feel better. Now, if you're asymptomatic or if your symptoms are so mild that you can binge watch whatever it is you binge watch, then you probably could also do some school. But those of you who are truly sick, this is the same as if you're sick with the flu or if you're sick with something else. We don't expect you to come back with all your work done. If you are quarantining, we expect you to come back with all your work done. Here's the thing. First of all, it's not summer vacation. There's work to do. Secondly, if you don't do the work, you're going to get so far behind that you'll have trouble catching up and your grades will suffer. And as I've mentioned before, you now have a permanent record of grades. You have 3 semesters of a permanent record of grades that will go to every college you apply to, that will go to any employer you look for jobs with after high school. And we'll go to the military if you're interested in joining the military. So you want your grades to be the best reflection they can be. Now, I did the math. I know I'm not good at that. But here's the math. You spend exactly 7 hours a day in school when school is in session. If we take away lunch and homeroom and times, the first few minutes as class starts or the last few minutes before school or before a class ends, it's roughly 6 hours, give or take, that you are gainfully employed in doing something having to do with school, whether that's hearing a lecture or doing an assignment or taking a test, whatever it is, around 6 hours, give or take, right? That's what you should be spending at home. Probably a little bit less because you can go at your own pace. But when my kids were homeschooled, we had school every day. You see this plan book? I had one of these for my kids when I homeschooled. I had a plan book that told them, and they knew everything they had to get done every day. So that's what we're expecting. Most of you were in quarantine last spring. It's the same thing. We're expecting you to do that work. So that's the expectation. And yeah, you would much rather sleep in and watch Netflix or whatever else, but you're a student. I would too, by the way. I spent the snow days getting all caught up in grading, on my grading. I've got everything graded that can be graded at this point. Hours and hours and hours. I watched maybe 3 episodes of Madam Secretary in there too. So it wasn't all work, but that's the expectation. So if you didn't know before now that we're expecting you to get the work done while you're gone and come back with it or turn it in Teams, then now you know. Here's at least for my class and for most of your teachers, this is the procedure. The first place you go to figure out what you're doing is to FACS. This should look, what you're seeing on the screen, should look like what you see when you log in to FACS. And so I'm going to take you through where you go in this. So over here, where you can't see it, you go down here to classes. Now, I think it will just have your classes up here. For me, it has all the classes. But you are Bible 10b. Doesn't matter if you do Bible 10b or 10a. They say the exact same thing. I copy and paste from one to the other. If you click on that, you get a really ugly picture of me. But then you also get your homework. What does it say was your homework for Monday and Tuesday?
No.
Enjoy your snow day. And I hope you did that. You get extra credit if you did. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah,
You were shoveling snow.
I was shoveling all day long.
Yeah. Your name was given to Mrs. Lowen, who was looking for someone to shovel at her place, and people. I said, Peyton is always. She's a hard worker, and she's always looking for money. So call Peyton. But she didn't do that. She got somebody off Facebook.
Oh my
But
God!
yeah.
On Facebook is right.
So now if you scroll down, you'll see that those who are in quarantine today have this to do. And this is what we're going to do in class today. And you just do that. It's a list of what you're supposed to do, right? By the way, your unit test has been pushed off to next Tuesday. Now you know what to do, right? Mm-hmm. If you need to write that down or leave that on the screen, that's fine. But then to do it, you go to Teams. This is what, if you were taking the Chapter 19 quiz from home, this is what it would look like. Here's what's happening, not as much as last year, but I just want to stop it all together. The easiest way to do this, you notice that every time I say open and complete in Teams, but do not return it. If it says do not return it, you don't need to return it. But what people aren't doing is they're not opening it and returning it in Teams. They're printing it, doing it with a pen or a pencil, taking a picture of it and sending a picture back to me. And y'all aren't the greatest photographers in the world, and so it'll have shadows across it, or your handwriting isn't that great, or the other thing is that it will be about this big.
Oh wow!
And you know my eyes, right? You see every day that I have to wear these glasses are always on my head, and with the smaller print in that, I have to put on the even more powerful glasses. So you are causing yourself to have more work, and you're certainly causing me to have more work as well. So this is what you do. This is the student view. This is what you see. You see these three little dots? Mm-hmm. You click on that. And it will give you the option to open in Teams. Voila! Here it is. And in this case, you just type in your answers, right? You just click on it. You type in your answers. You type in all your answers, and then you hit submit. And it comes directly back to me. I think I just submitted something for an actual student. I probably shouldn't have done that. and if it's like that, if it's a quiz that's been typed in for you, it grades it for me, or at least partially grades it for me. There's some things that it doesn't grade, and then I go back through and grade it. For verse quizzes, please hit open in Teams. Go to those three little dots, open in Teams, and type in the words. If it bothers you that it elongates the blanks, just get rid of the blanks. Or just shorten the blanks. But I want it returned directly to me in Teams. It's easier for you, and it's easier for me. Everybody understand that? Mm-hmm. So that's the procedure. And if you were gone when we did the Chapter 19 quiz, if I were grading it, which actually we haven't done Chapter 19, so that's why it's not in there, I would expect you to have returned that while you were in quarantine. Unless you were sick with COVID and too sick to do anything, right? So that's the expectation. This is the procedure. Now I need you to look me in the eye and shake your head, yes. If you heard that, Anna, if you heard that, did you hear that, and you understand that? You are responsible for it, okay? And some of you will probably see some missing assignments in fact. So I would, if I were you, I would go find those missing assignments and get them turned in because it's hurting your grade. Yes, question. Did you have a question, Caleb? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. I'm sorry. Okay. Anybody have a question? No questions? Excellent.
Okay.
You had two of them.
We have one more.
So if you would please then open your books to chapter 19, student work, or not student work, introduction. And we're going to go through this together. I'm going to have to go grab those other glasses.
That's good. I bet you were sleeping all night.
Okay, I'm on page 137. Go there with me, please, and follow along as I read to you. So Jesus is still at the Feast of Tabernacles. He's the same place he was in chapter 18. So he's still in Jerusalem at the Feast of Tabernacles. He's going to go to the temple, and the people are going to be divided about what he has to say. So here's the introduction. Lisa is a medical missionary to Bangladesh. She knows that winning converts is hard there because the society is so much different than it is here in the United States. Yet she is committed to bringing Bangladeshis to a decision either for or against Christ while she's trying to meet their medical needs. Bangladesh is about the size of the state of Tennessee, but whereas Tennessee has a population of about 11 million people, Bangladesh is crammed with about 132 million people. According to the World Fact Book of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, Bangladesh is, quote, one of the world's poorest, most densely populated, and least developed nations. More than 2/3 of its workers are employed in agriculture, but the unemployment rate there is 35%, so more than a third of the people. Agricultural production is regularly hindered alternately by severe drought and cyclones and flooding. The per capita annual income is only, so per person, the average is $1,570 a year, less than most of your parents make in a month, or perhaps even a week. Only slightly more than half of the people over the age of 15 can read and write. 83% of Bangladeshis are Muslims. 16% are Hindu. The remaining 1% are either animists, believers in some obscure tribal religions, or Christian in the broadest sense of the term, which includes Roman Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, etc. Very few Bangladeshis are true believers because the society makes believers pay a very high price for their profession of faith. For example, Lisa relates how a Bangladeshi man who gets saved might have his rice paddies destroyed by his neighbors, thereby devastating him economically because that is his livelihood. After all, the primary money crop of the nation is rice production. If he has a little vegetable stand or rug selling business in the local market, other Bangladeshis will no longer do business with him. He might even be attacked and beaten to death. Bangladeshi women who become true Christians have an even harder time. According to the Bangladeshi customs, when a woman marries, she leaves her own family for good and goes to live with her husband in his parents' house. If she gets saved, she is kicked out of the house and has neither a legitimate means of earning a living. Women in Bangladesh are not educated, so they cannot conduct a business, nor anywhere to live. She becomes destitute. She gets no support from her husband or her family. As far as they are concerned, she is dead, and her husband will easily find another wife. The mission agency of which Lisa is a part established a special ministry called Heart House to take care of such women. They learn special craft skills so that they can earn a living, purchase food, and provide for any children that they may have. One elderly Christian woman raised 5 children through the work that she did in Heart House. For these reasons, if a Bangladeshi decides to accept Christ, he or she faces a severe reality. Living for Christ costs them a great price. How unlike America, where by contrast, living for Christ seems to carry hardly any price at all. How ashamed we believers should be whenever we are afraid to take a public stand for Christ or witness for him. As you study this lesson about how Christ divided the people, ask yourself how you would have responded if you had been there at the Feast of Tabernacles and heard Christ's call to decision. How are you responding to his call today? So we're going to read John 7, 32 through 53, and then we'll do the student work together as a class. Yes? So if you would, please turn your Bibles to John 7. Yes. Yeah, hurry up, please. Beginning at verse 32.
John 7, verse 32, right?
Yes, beginning at verse 32 of John 7. The Pharisees heard the crowd muttering these things about him. And so they were muttering, is he the Christ? Isn't he the Christ? Will the Christ do anything more than this? And so they're disagreeing on who he is. The Pharisees heard the crowd muttering these things about him, and the chief priests and Pharisees sent officers to arrest him. Jesus then said, I will be with you a little longer, and then I am going to him who sent me. You will seek me, and you will not find me. Where I am, you cannot come. The Jews said to one another, where does this man intend to go that we will not find him? Does he intend to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? What does he mean by saying, you will seek me and you will not find me, and where I am you cannot come? On the last day of the feast, the great day, Jesus stood up and cried out, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scriptures have said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water. Now, this he said about the Spirit, whom those who believed in him were to receive. For as yet the Spirit had not been given, because Jesus was not yet glorified. When they heard these words, some of the people said, this really is the prophet. Others said, this is the Christ. This is the Christ. But some said, is the Christ to come from Galilee? Has not the scripture said that Christ comes from the offspring of David and comes from Bethlehem, the village where David was? So there was a division among the people over him. Some of them wanted to arrest him, but no one laid hands on him. The officers then came to the chief priests and Pharisees, who said to them, why did you not bring him? The officers answered, no one ever spoke like this man. The Pharisees answered them, have you also been deceived? Have any of the authorities or the Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd that does not know the law is accursed. Nicodemus, who had gone to him before and who was one of them, meaning one of the Pharisees, said to them, does our law judge a man without first giving him a hearing and learning what he does? They replied, are you from Galilee too? Search and see that no prophet arises from Galilee. So we're going to do these questions together. I'm going to switch my glasses. And I am going to turn on this light to make it easier for me to see as well. So the first question says the Pharisees obviously disagreed with Jesus' teaching, but people don't usually try to arrest those they disagree with. If you were one of the Pharisees, why would you have wanted to go after him? Or why do you think they wanted to go after him, Mary?
Because they felt like he was lying.
Yeah, he was claiming to be the Son of God. And even more, he was claiming to be God, to be Messiah. Yes, Trinity.
I was going to say that they might have thought he was blaspheming.
Absolutely. And Trinity, if it isn't true that Jesus was the Son of God, that he was God, that he was Messiah, is it blasphemy? Yeah. Absolutely, just as much as if you or I said those things, right? So, so they believed he was blaspheming, which is a very, very serious charge in Judaism. Yes?
Wait, so blasphemy is basically just claiming to be God and whatnot?
Blasphemy is more than that. Blasphemy is any sort of statement that is false with regard to who God is or what the truth is. It's beyond just an error. It's an offense. Ooh, bless you. It's an offense. Whoa, bless you. It's an offense to God. Okay. Next question. I'll give you a little chance to. When Jesus said he would go somewhere, the Jews thought Jesus was going to leave them to reach the Gentiles who had begun to follow Judaism. Why didn't they understand what Jesus was saying? Yes. Yeah, they didn't know him, and they didn't understand who he was, right? They didn't have faith in him. Now, again, we have this theme of misunderstanding in John, so we don't want to be too hard on them. The disciples also didn't understand, right? So we don't want to be too hard on them. David, are you paying attention? Then please do. Next question. Imagine that you were a Jew in Jesus' day. What might have made you want to side with the Pharisees against Jesus?
Because the Pharisees were like part of like the law. People back then would have trusted the law.
Yeah. So they were the experts, right, in the law. So they ought to know. Yeah. Well, they didn't make the law. They were the experts in the law. God made the law. They were the experts. Sort of like if you wanted legal advice, Anna, who would you go to if you wanted legal advice?
Legal?
No, legal like within the law.
Oh.
Who would you go to?
Like,
your mom? What's your dad's profession? What's his profession?
lawyer?
He's a lawyer. Right. So I think you'd probably go to your dad, right? Because he's an expert in the law, right? So these men were experts in the law. So they ought to know. Anything else about that? Why would you side with the Pharisees? Mary.
Because like Jesus just came out of nowhere doing all these things, which kind of could have freaked some out, and then they're like saying he's not like the true God because of what the Pharisees or like the people that taught them that how Jesus was like on like a riding white horse or something. They probably thought that's what they were was gonna happen and didn't expect. And so they're like, that's not true. That can't be.
Okay. So because of their own beliefs,
Yeah.
About Messiah, they would believe. But I'm looking for, and that's good. But I'm looking for a specific one. What have we heard over and over again about not only what the Pharisees wanted to do to Christ, but what they did to people who believed? Yeah, Cheyenne. Yeah. I think you'd have a very strong sense of, I don't want to get kicked out of the synagogue. I don't want to be be persecuted for a guy that I don't even know who he is. I don't even know if he is telling the truth.
I was going to crucify him, or was it just like a random choice, another William?
They wanted to kill him, but their law would not allow them to do that. And so they needed the Romans to do that. And the Romans' preferred method of execution was crucifixion. although there could have been other ways, but the people literally cried out for his crucifying. So it wasn't random, but it also wasn't necessarily didn't necessarily have to happen that way. Jews couldn't crucify anyone. They couldn't, under Roman law, they weren't supposed to give a death sentence to anyone, although they did do that for certain cases having to do with the law. What was it? What does it seem to you that the Jewish people wanted Jesus to be? Cheyenne? A warrior? What else? Messiah or the prophet, right? That's what somebody said, this is the prophet with a capital P. We'll talk about that when we get to we've talked about it before, we'll talk about it again when we get to the lecture. But I think all of those, I think there were probably people that wanted all of those. Would you have wanted what they wanted? Why or why not? We won't discuss that. Just go ahead and write an answer that's true for you. Would you have wanted what they wanted? Why or why not? Next question. What do you think the officers meant by their response to the chief priests and Pharisees in verse 40? So let's read that again. Let's see, 46. 46. It says this. The officers answered, no one ever spoke like this man. So the question was, the officers then came to the chief priests and Pharisees who said to them, why do you not bring him? Why did you not bring him when they were supposed to arrest him? And they said, nobody's ever spoken like this man. So what do you think the officers meant by that no one has ever spoken like this man? Cheyenne? Okay, he spoke truth and lie. Yeah.
I said they didn't expect him to I guess, well, I don't know how to word it. Talk back isn't the right word, but kind of speak out to them, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't really expect that.
Yeah, I'm sure there were a lot of people who weren't real fond of the Jewish leadership, right? They lorded their power over them. They made everyone else feel like they were nothing. And here comes this man who's not only healing people, but he's speaking respectfully to the ordinary people. And he's denouncing the leadership. Dig that, right? If you're one of the common people that's been downtrodden by the leadership. And so and elsewhere we see that Jesus spoke with authority, not as the scribes spoke, not as the leadership spoke, but with an authority that they'd never heard before. Was this a valid excuse for their disobedience, that no one spoke like him? There's not a right answer for that. But obviously, what?
Can you explain these God?
Well, not one that it would have gotten them in trouble, because I'm not sure they believed he was God. They just knew that he was unlike anyone else. But But I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. But obviously it wasn't his time to die yet, so he wasn't going to be arrested yet. Scripture doesn't tell us if Nicodemus ever believed in Jesus. If he was a believer, do you think that he was bold enough before the Pharisees? Why or why not? By the way, he also helped bury Jesus. It doesn't flat out tell us he became a believer, but he acted, that his actions here and after Jesus died would indicate that he was. So I think that this is a little misleading. And again, this is an opinion thing. Was he bold enough? He was bolder than anyone else was willing to be, right? I mean, that would be my answer to that. Nobody else was saying, look, hey, do we condemn someone without a trial? We're lawyers. We can't do that. That was more than anyone else was willing to do. And then what would you have done in his place? Go ahead and answer that one. That's also a personal response. So go ahead and answer that. And when you're done with those two questions, we're done for today. And so, awesome.